Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive. This time, we're really digging into something that I think a lot of you have been asking for. We're taking all those resources that we've been gathering on agroecology and figuring out what to actually DO with them.
It's like creating a personalized curriculum, but way more fun than any syllabus I had in school.
Exactly. Imagine books, websites, networks, all the tools you need to level up your agroecology knowledge, no matter where you're starting from.
And the fact that you're here with us already tells me you're serious about taking that next step. You're not just skimming the surface, you're ready to go deep.
Absolutely. So let's start with something I always loved, books. First up, we've got Stephen Gleisman's Agroecology. Would you say that's like the essential text?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a cornerstone. Well, what I think is so great about Gleisman's book is that he doesn't just lay out the science, which he does beautifully, by the way, but he also really dives into the social and political side of things, too.
It's not just about the farming itself, it's the whole system, right? The people, the economics.
Exactly. He really emphasizes that food production is interwoven with so many other aspects of our society, economics, culture, even power dynamics. It's not just about what happens on the farm.
Makes sense. Now I see we've also got Farming While Black by Leah Penniman on our list. This one feels like a whole different perspective.
It is, and it's a really powerful one. Penniman weaves together practical farming knowledge with history, with social justice. It's an essential read for anyone who wants to understand the cultural and historical roots of agroecology, especially from the perspective of communities that have been traditionally marginalized.
Yeah, it speaks to reclaiming that agricultural heritage, connecting with the land in a deeper way.
Absolutely. It asks some really important questions like who has access to land, who's been excluded from the narrative, and how do we create a more inclusive food system?
Really important stuff. Now, while books are great, let's be real. Who has time to read all the books these days?
Right.
What about some online resources? What are some of your go-to websites?
Oh, well, for sure. You can't go wrong with the FAO's Agroecology Knowledge Hub. It's got everything, research papers, case studies, even policy guides. It's like your one-stop shop.
I've definitely gotten lost down a few research rabbit holes on that site. Now, speaking of putting knowledge into action, I see we have the Agroecology Fund on our list. That's about actually investing in this stuff, right?
Exactly. It's an alliance of donors who are supporting agroecological projects all over the world.
Pretty cool, huh? Talk about aligning your money with your values.
I love it. Putting your money where your mouth is, right? And then there's Practical Action Agroecology Database. This one sounds more my style.
I thought you might like that one. Think of it as a recipe book for agroecology. It's full of case studies and practical advice, all organized in a way that's actually useful. You can even filter by region to find techniques that will work in your area.
Adding that to my bookmarks right now. But you know me, I'm a visual learner. Any good YouTube channels out there? Oh, have you seen Farmer's Footprint? Their stuff is top-notch. They dive into all sorts of regenerative practices, and their cinematography is absolutely stunning. You'll learn a ton and be visually captivated at the same time.
Sounds perfect. Definitely subscribing to that one. So we've covered a lot of knowledge here, but agroecology is about more than just information, right? What about the community aspect? I see Agroecology Europe on our list.
Yes, so that one's a pretty big network. Think of it as like a meeting place for anyone who's passionate about promoting agroecology in Europe. Farmers, researchers, activists, policymakers, they're all there. They advocate for policy change, they help connect people, and they share a ton of resources.
So basically, if you're in Europe, that's your tribe, right?
Yeah.
But what about globally? Are there any worldwide organizations or movements that stand out?
Oh, tons. But one that's really impactful is La Via Campesina. It's a movement led by peasants and small-scale farmers from all over the world. They're really focused on this idea of food sovereignty.
Food sovereignty. Now, there's a term I've heard thrown around a lot. What does that actually mean, like in a practical sense?
That's a great question. Because it's really at the heart of the agroecology movement. Basically, it's about communities having the right to define their own food systems, to decide how their food is produced, distributed, and consumed without being dictated by, those big industrial models.
It's about taking back control.
Yeah, exactly. It's about recognizing that food is more than just a commodity. It's tied to culture, to identity, to community well-being. And that's something that often gets lost in our current industrial food system.
Right, that disconnects from our food, our land. It makes you think. So food sovereignty is about reclaiming that connection. about rebuilding local food systems and empowering people to make choices that align with their values.
Exactly. It's about creating a food system that's not just sustainable, but also just an equitable. And it's something that's gaining a lot of momentum around the world as more and more people see the limitations of the industrial model.
It's really inspiring. And it
Yeah.
feels like we've just scratched the surface of what food sovereignty really entails. Maybe that's something we can dive into a little deeper in the next part of our deep dive.
I'd love to. It's a really fascinating concept with some big implications.
Well, then let's take a quick pause here and we'll pick up the conversation in part 2.
You know, it's fascinating how this idea of food sovereignty kind of connects so many different pieces of agroecology. It's not just about what you do on your farm, it's about reclaiming that sense of control, building a food system that's actually fair.
Yeah, it's like food sovereignty is the big picture, and then agroecology gives us the tools to actually make it happen.
Exactly. And what's really powerful about it is that it goes way beyond just, growing enough food. It's about communities having the power to decide for themselves how their food's produced, how it gets to them, who gets to eat.
So it's about who gets to make the decisions.
Yeah.
It's like who decides what food is grown, where it's sold, who has access to it.
Yeah, precisely. And it's recognizing that food is more than just something you buy at the store. It's part of culture, identity, community, all things that our current system kind of forgets sometimes.
Yeah, the disconnect that we have from our food, from the land, is pretty profound when you think about it. So food sovereignty is about bridging that gap again, rebuilding those local systems and letting communities make choices that actually reflect what they need and value.
Absolutely. It's about creating a food system that's not just sustainable, but also just an equitable. And honestly, it's an idea that's really gaining traction all over the world. More and more people are seeing those cracks in the industrial model and saying, hey, there's better ways.
It's really exciting to see. I'm curious, what are some real world examples of food sovereignty in action? How does this actually play out?
Oh, well, you see it all over, like the rise of community gardens, farmers markets, the growing demand for food that's local, that's sustainably produced, even indigenous communities reclaiming their traditional foodways.
It's about putting that power back in the hands of the people who are actually growing and eating the food.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that a lot of knowledge and wisdom comes from those small-scale farmers, those indigenous communities who have been stewards of the land for generations. Their voices need to be heard.
It's like tapping into that ancestral wisdom, right?
Right.
Learning from those who've been doing this successfully for centuries.
And it's about building a food system that's resilient, one that can adapt to climate change and really ensure that future generations will have enough to eat.
That's a powerful thought. And it makes you realize that agroecology, this whole movement, is so much bigger than just tweaking a few farming practices. It's about completely changing the way we relate to food, to the earth.
Yeah, it's about understanding that we're part of nature, not separate from it. And that our choices about what we eat, they have these ripple effects. They impact our health, our communities, the planet.
It's a lot to take in, but it's also incredibly hopeful. You've given us this roadmap not just to learn about agroecology, but to imagine a completely different future for our food.
And the best part is everyone can be a part of it. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer or if you just have a little balcony garden. There's a way for everyone to contribute.
So what's the next step? For someone listening who's totally fired up right now, what would you say is the most important thing to take away from all this?
I think the most important thing is to just start exploring. Find what speaks to you, what resonates with your values, and go from there. Maybe you connect with a local food organization, maybe you try out a new technique in your garden.
Find your entry point and just jump in. Become a part of this collective effort to build a better food future.
And remember, nobody's perfect. We're all learning as we go. It's about being willing to experiment, to make mistakes, and to be part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, recognizing that we all have a role to play in this.
And that's a powerful thing because when we come together, when we have a shared vision and we're committed to action, we can change things. We really can.
It's like that saying, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
And in the case of agroecology, that group is getting bigger every day. So let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep learning, keep exploring, and keep working together to build that better food future for everyone.
I love that. And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. I'm sure our listeners are out there buzzing with ideas and inspiration.
I hope so, because the future of food is in our hands. It's up to all of us to shape it in a way that's just sustainable and delicious.
It's really amazing,
Yeah.
It feels like we've done more than just give people information. We've given them like a whole toolkit to start their own agroecology journey.
That's what's so cool about these deep dives, I think. It's not just passive listening, it's about giving people the power to go out and do something, to be part of the change.
Exactly. It's not just about learning about agroecology, it's about feeling equipped to actually make a difference. Whether it's in their own backyard or like on a global scale, who knows?
And that's where the magic happens, right? When people move beyond the theory and actually start putting these principles into practice.
And those ripples, they can spread so far. One person gets inspired to start a sustainable farm, and suddenly their whole community is transformed. You never know what one small change can lead to.
It really is like planting a seed. You give it the right conditions, a little bit of love, and suddenly you have a whole ecosystem flourishing.
I love that. And it's so true. It's all connected, right? Our individual choices, our actions, they're all part of a bigger picture.
And even the smallest actions can contribute to a more just and sustainable food system. It all adds up.
So for our listener out there who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed but definitely inspired, what would you say is the most important thing to take away from our deep dive today?
Honestly, I think it's remembering that agroecology is so much bigger than just farming techniques. It's about shifting our whole relationship with food, with the land, even with each other. It's a whole different way of thinking.
It's realizing that our food choices have power. They shape the health of our communities, our planet, the future of food itself. It's a big deal.
It's about aligning those choices with our values, and using our voices, our actions to push for something better, a more just and sustainable world.
And it all starts with taking that first step. Maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's reaching out to a local organization, maybe it's just starting a conversation about where our food comes from.
Every single action, no matter how small, can make a difference. And when we do it together, we can create a ripple effect that transforms the whole system.
So, to our listener out there, we want to say keep exploring, keep learning, and keep taking action. The future of food is literally in our hands. It's up to all of us to create a world where everyone has access to good, healthy food.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Let's make it happen.
And that's a wrap on our agroecology deep dive. Until next time, folks, happy exploring.
See you next time.